Hello everyone and welcome to another Versus video with Brian Brown doing and myself, Brad Nelson. Today we're actually going to be testing for the GP that happened last weekend because we get to work that way. That's how this works, right?
It is exactly how it works,
we play these Versus videos and then we get on the road and then we come back and play more Versus videos. So we're going to Grand Prix Chicago this weekend, which all of you know the results of. I don't want to spoil it, but I guess I am, because I think I'm going to be playing junk mid-range at this tournament. And let's take a look at the deck, and then we'll talk about the thought process. And BBD has a long-winded response to one of the cards that I built this deck for.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I also don't want to spoil my result from the GP, but I went 6-3 in this day too.
High five.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at the deck, and we'll explain everything. So the idea behind why I want to play junk for this tournament is that I think Blood Baron of Vizkopa is very well positioned right now, but not in every matchup. So when this card is bad, like let's say Mono Blue, Jund Monsters, matchups like that, I want to be playing a green-based deck with removal spells to like limp across those matchups until we can get to sideboard where I can take them out and reconfigure my deck.
Yeah.
But the green creatures have always had a tough time against decks with Pack Rats and Lightbane Zombies and Demons, to where you have your removal, but you're still just a little bit behind them because of their card advantage when they get to take a creature with Lightbane. So I want to have access to 4 of these to where I have temples and underworld connections to dig for them along with coursers, to where I just want to limp into finding these guys even if one gets taken away, just because they just annihilate that matchup. They're so good against the mono-black variants. Just being able to put a Blood Baron into play almost always wins the game, as long as you're not too far behind before that happens. And you could say, playing 1, 2, or 3, but I want to play 4 because they have Thoughtseize, they have Lifebane Zombie, you're going to get one ripped away. It's much like the Sphinx's Revelation philosophy. It's like, they will take my first one, but I'm just going to spend the rest of the game digging for the second one, and then winning the game with that card. But the rest of the deck is 4 Caryatids and 1 Voyage Incinerator, and the reason I have the 5th Mana Accelerant is because this deck kind of flounders in the early turns when it doesn't have something to do. Temple into Temple is not the greatest play, so we do have 10 Temples, but I think I might try to trim 1 more, depending on where my mana, where I feel the mana base is at. But playing 2 Ooze and 3 Coursers, mostly because these are just very good mid-range cards. Scavenging Ooze is great in decks like this in the late game because you're good at not only killing their oozes, but if they don't have ooze in their deck, there's just creatures just sitting in the graveyards to let this guy come down later in the game and just give you a huge life boost and a big monster to try finishing the game off.
Yeah, like I actually like, I've played a lot of decks like this, just a ton of them. I like only like 8 or 9 temples because like you just are so slow against some of the other decks if you have that many temples. And I think this card is just exceptional. I would probably play a 3rd one. Like I think it's so good. Yeah,
I tried playing like Reed Duke's first variation of this back at a couple invitations ago, and 4 was a lot.
I think 4 is a lot, yeah. Yeah,
and Ooze is very good right now, but I do think that they get worse in multiples in the sense that the body is not relevant for this deck. It's more relevant for a deck with like Gorkon Rampager. But this deck doesn't need that body in the early turns, and it's not going to do a lot until you have your mana developed. Whereas when you draw 1 of the 2, it's going to be always exceptional when it's not in your opening hand. So I never want this to be in my opening hand. So I like the number 2 for right now. I like 2 Polakranos as well, since having too many late game creatures that can be taken with Lifebane is bad, as well as this card doesn't double up that well. And so if one's ever living, you want the rest of your cards to be doing something. Especially in the ramp-based strategy where you're like Thoughtseize and doing stuff like that. Like if you Thoughtseize, play some ramp guys, and then you just have multiple Polakranos in your hand, like that just gives them enough time to get back into the game. So I like the number 2. And then 1/1/1, and these are all experimental. I know I want at least 1 Obsidian. I know I want at least 1 Elspeth, but I'm hedging right now with 1 Vraska, since I do like having more 2-for-1s against the mono-black matchup, especially since they just have edges against me. Like they get to 2-for-1 me, I want to 2-for-1 them.
I like all 3 of those cards a lot.
Yeah, I know you do. Before we start filming this, he's like, I would move this here, and I would move this here, and I'd move this here, and I'd turn that to that. But we'll talk about Removal Suite real quick, and then we'll get into Blood Baron. 2 Underworld Connections, could be 1 Connections, 1 Read the Bones. I did like that split, but I do like Underworld Connections when it goes with Courser, and maybe cutting the 4th Courser is wrong. But doubling up on it is sometimes fine, sometimes it just doesn't do anything. 1 ultimate price to hedge against decks like Monsters, and just have more efficient ways to deal with cards like Master of Waves. But it's just a good mono black removal spell. So where this used to be an abrupt decay, I think I want it to be an ultimate price because I am playing Golgari Charm. So I have 6 ways to deal with Detention Spheres, 4 ways to deal with other early enchantment-based cards, and that's the big one, right? Like 2 Banishing Lights, you can argue they kill walkers as well as gods. 4 Downfall, obviously, in a deck like this, but Golgari Charm is a card that hasn't really seen a lot of main deck play, and after playing at the Invitational, I just think that card is phenomenal right now. It lets you keep your creatures to regenerate through Supreme Verdicts in game 1s, which is something that players just will not play around. It kills all the Elspeth tokens, so like you can just let an Elspeth Dirtle while you're like Underworld Connectioning or trying to build some other board state, and you can just get rid of all the tokens. It helps you regenerate your team, and it kills a lot of the problematic permanents in the format right now. So I've been trying 2 of them, and I've been very pleased. It doesn't seem like a card that will be good in a lot of situations, but it shines, and it creates situations that these decks have never had access to actually interacting in, at least in game 1.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like Golgari Charm. I think it's pretty good right now as well.
But yeah, let's debate. So let's bring the cameras back up. When I was coming back from the Invitational a week ago, my gut was just like Blood Baron. Blood Baron's really strong right now. If you look at a lot of the top decks in the format, it just seems like it would just prey on a lot of the matchups. Sure, it's not good against Pulkranos, and it's not great against a lot of things, but the removal right now is perfect for it. Like, everyone's playing Doomblades and ultimate prices, and there's not a lot of Mizzy Mortars. Mizzy Mortars actually, I think, at its like all-time low for utility because of like the matchups. Like, there's a lot more Master Waves in the format. There's a lot more Pulkranos, a lot of aggressive decks. You just want instant speed removal. Sure, it's a card that Jund Monsters wants access to, and Mono Red Devotion will always play 4 of, but the utility, I think, is low, and a lot of the decks that play it might trim on those numbers and play other removal spells because Ultimate Price is just seeing a lot of popularity right now. So I think a multicolor card that has protection for black and white just seems amazing, but BBD has, you know, a different opinion on the card.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. Like, I think it's very good against a lot of different decks. However, it's like such a hit or miss card. Like, it's not a hit. Like, it's not always a hit. Whereas like a card like Obzet's always not necessarily always a hit as well, but it is just good in so many more matchups. Whereas like even like the matchups like Monsters where Blood Baron's really bad, like Obzet's still like serviceable. Like, it's not necessarily what you want to be doing, but it's not terrible either. And like the thing about Blood Baron is when you build your deck, like Brad's deck is entirely built around Blood Baron basically, and when you run into a matchup where it's not good, you're gonna lose game 1. Yeah. Like you can build your sideboard to beat those decks in games 2 and 3, and like I'm sure that you can beat those decks in games 2 and 3, but I just hate having a deck that's just going to lose game 1 to certain matchups just no matter what. And I feel like that's the case when like you get paired against Monsters and like Blood Baron dies to like Mortars, Domri, Pulkranos, Gore Clan Rampage, or Dragon. You just like like I don't see this deck beating on Monsters in game 1, or like something like Mono Blue where like you're building up for like Blood Baron of Vizkopa and they just have like 8 elemental tokens, or they just rapid hybridization it or something like that. So I don't know. Like while I do think the card is extremely powerful, I'm not sure I would want to base my entire strategy around that card.
Well, and that's just it. Like, I'm not basing my strategy around it. I'm putting it in a shell that I feel like the other cards are serviceable in all the matchups where Blood Baron is bad. But the shell is bad against decks where Blood Baron is good. So having that be the centerpiece of my win condition in the matchups where the rest of my cards will just flounder and shouldn't be, you know, that great, seems rather interesting. At least somewhere I'm gonna explore it.
Sure. But yeah. No. I mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. It's just.
And so today we wanted to put the deck up against a matchup that Blood Baron wouldn't be good against, because like if we played against Mono Black and I drew a bunch of Blood Barons, that's obvious. So BBD is going to be piloting Mono Blue, and we're going to see what this deck looks like in a matchup where the Blood Barons will underperform and probably be boarded out, or at least most of them. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and in the comments let me know what you thought of this deck, and obviously if I end up playing it, we'll continue the storyline, and if not, only in the comments when we'll be talking about this deck.
Probably what's going to happen is I'm going to end up playing this deck too. I'm just going to look like an idiot.
BBD is just going to be holding a trophy at the end of the week. If you win the tournament and play 4 Blood Barons, you will be holding both of them in your trophy pick.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And probably I'm going to force you to eat them.
Well, that's taking it too far, yeah.
But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and let us know in the comments. So you'd think that I would know how this works after doing it for about 2 years, but sometimes you just, forget that there are 15 cards that you get to board in.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Hi,
welcome to your
nice
first Versus video.
Hi, I'm a little nervous. I don't really know the procedure.
Okay, well, the part we do now is where we talk about the sideboard, Bradley.
Oh, is that where after game 1 you get to change cards around?
It is, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's do that. And sorry about the confusion.
So I noticed you have 3 miscutters. Let's just rip those up and get them out of here. Yeah.
Because those will be good in the matchup. But yeah, let's talk about this sideboard. We have another Vraska and another Elspeth, and the reason that they're split like that is mostly for a hedge for the mono black matchup and just having more removal spells that can also do some interesting things in games and sometimes be a win condition if you draw too much removal. This acts like removal spell that can continuously tick up and continuously tick down, and it just keeps like killing things as the game goes on. So I do like having access to it. And since I feel like Elspeth is at its weakest point right now in Standard, mostly because like
it really is.
It's just like Thoughtseize. Like Thoughtseize and Elspeth both are very good cards, but they have been having such a high impact on the format for so long that the format has just warped around them. Everyone just knows that they will have to prepare for those cards. So it is a little bit weaker, but there are matchups where you just want access to it because it's powerful. Sin Collector, on the other hand, is a card that I think is very good right now.
Me too.
Yeah, I think a lot of decks have ignored it. It's good against burn strategies or even mono-red aggressive decks because of all the burn they have. You just play it, block a Rakdos Cackler, take a lightning strike from their hand, and that's perfect. It's a 2-for-1 that this deck has. Against other black variants, sometimes it's good, especially since you want to board this in against black variants because you have the Blood Baron of Escopa against them, so they're not going to take this card. They're always going to take the Blood Barons. So
yeah, I actually love this card against mono black a lot because you take their removal spell and it trades with a Lifebane zombie
and Mutavolts.
Yeah, and it's actually the same. It's the same thing that like your deck's better against them than theirs is against you, but they have Lifebane to change the tide, and this is like you re-Lifebaning them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find 2-for-1s against Lifebane zombie for a long time. That's why like my Jun Monsters deck was playing Vraskas and Chandra's.
Yep.
Just trying to find ways to stem the bleeding that Lifebane gives them. Along with that is Bioblight. Now this is a card that a lot of people don't play in these strategies, but I've died enough times to Pack Rat to where I'm at least going to have some answers that I can dig for.
I would not play a deck like this with less than 2 Bioblights.
Exactly.
I would even consider 3.
I was trying to find room for a 3, and we could potentially find that through the rest of testing, and I would not be surprised for Chicago having 3 of these in the deck.
Yep.
2 Doomblades to help out against monsters and other decks where like mono blue where I just need to kill whatever's on the board. 2 more connections against control decks and mono black, along with the Thoughtseize that I will just bring in randomly.
Yeah.
It'll just be like, sometimes on the draw I'll want it against decks with heavy removal. I'm going to want all 4 Thoughtseize against control decks. I'm going to want all 4 Thoughtseize against decks like Jun Monsters.
Definitely, yes.
And these guys that are just amazing against control, amazing against mono blue, and they're so much more powerful in a deck that has ramp and removal against like the mono blue decks like these Mistcutter Hydras are better in this deck than they are in Jun Monsters, because this deck has acceleration, ways to disrupt them, and needs a good clock against them, which just helps this card just be phenomenal. You just find the turn to make the 5/5 or even the 6/6, or you make the 4/4 and just have enough removal to keep alive long enough and life gain. So I'm a huge fan of this card in this strategy. Along with like against control decks, you can just go turn 3 Sin Collector, take their verdict, turn 4 make a 3/3, and all of a sudden you have 5 attacking and you've disrupted them. And whenever they like tap out, that's the turn you get to play your connections or your Thoughtseizes or your Planeswalkers. So yeah, that is junk midrange that I'm going to convince him to play with this video. It's going to happen right now.
I guess we'll find that out.
We'll see if I 5-0 you today like you did, Todd.
That was gas.